Hey, welcome in. You're listening to the daily version of the Korelin Economics Report. I'm Al Korelin. I appreciate you joining me. I have an old friend on the line with me who hasn't been on the show for quite some time. His people have, so to speak, but he has not, and that's Doug Casey. I met Doug for the first time back in the early 1980s when I had the privilege of introducing him as a featured speaker at an investment conference that we were both at in Boston. I had just read his book, Crisis Investing. Since that time, I've gotten to know Doug and his, I use the word staff loosely, but they're really not a staff. They're all, I would have to say, affiliated associates, partners, what have you. Doug started Casey Research, and now it's grown to the point where he's got some of the most capable, intelligent, interesting people working with him that I have never seen. Doug, thank you very much for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to be here with you, Al. Even though I'm not with you, I'm at the moment at the beach in Uruguay.
In Uruguay. Well, I'm at the moment in the rain in the Pacific Northwest. Hey, I got a question for you. The situation in the Middle East is really, really starting to, it's not even simmering anymore. Now it's just on the verge of boiling. Just recently, Iran came out and announced that they were cutting their oil exports to both the United Kingdom and to France. Saudi Arabia first said, well, we're going to cut our oil output, and then Saudi Arabia came back and said, we'll go ahead and beef up our output so there's not going to be any disruptions. What are the implications in your mind, Doug, to all of this?
Well, it seems to me that the U.S. in particular has been prodding Iran, treating it like a kid treats a hornet's nest.
I agree.
For over 20 years. They're finally going to get what they're looking for, which appears to be a war. I mean, they call it part of the axis of evil and all that. It's amazing to me that the U.S. attacked Afghanistan and Iraq, which are two totally irrelevant backwaters that had never done anything to provoke the U.S. So I guess Iran's on the dance card next. But Iran is hunting big game. I mean, this is a much bigger country.
I agree. How do you think this thing is going to evolve over the next, I don't know, I would have to say the next few short weeks? I mean, do you think it's feasible that perhaps Israel will attack Iran?
Well, I think it would be very crazy of the Israelis to attack Iran, because Iran is unlikely to ever attack Israel, even if Iran gets nuclear weapons, and for all we know, they may have the nuclear weapons right now. In today's world, you don't have to make your own nuclear weapons. You can buy them from people or steal them from people. And actually, this is rumored to have been the case in the days when the Soviet Union broke down. I mean, those nuclear bombs were going all over the place. But the Iranians would never use the bombs on the Israelis, simply for the same reason that the Americans and the Soviets never bombed each other. It would be mutually assured destruction. The Israelis are said to have about 200 nuclear weapons, and I have no question that they'd use them all over Iran. So no, the Iranians aren't going to attack the Israelis, but the Iranians, I'm sure, want to have a nuclear weapon, just because it's the one thing that can keep you from being attacked. If the Iraqis had had a nuclear weapon, the Americans would never have attacked them. It makes sense that the Iranians have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting point. And, I guess my comment is I have to agree with the gentleman who I think is perhaps one of the most important and greatest and most honest politicians in the world, and that's your friend and mine, Ron Paul. I honestly, Doug, I think the U.S. has absolutely no business whatsoever getting involved in the Middle East. I've talked with you about it. I've talked with some of your colleagues, Rick Rule, other people who have been over there, boots on the ground, met the people, et cetera, and you guys all say the same thing. What is this thing all about?
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. You're just sticking your nose into an alien culture that they don't understand, they have no business in, and then going over there and killing people and destroying property. It makes no sense to me. Of course, I'm of the opinion that the U.S. government has been increasingly populated by and dominated by sociopaths. These people, this is the type of thing these people do. So I expect a bad outcome to this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, let's look at one other side of this, though. What effect do you think this is going to have, Doug, on the price of precious metals? Now, so far today, gold is up over $10 an ounce. What do you think?
Of course, on any given day, it can go up or down, and that's almost random for all kinds of reasons. But it's got to be bullish for gold because in order to finance these wars, the U.S. government is printing up more and more dollars. Now, they're not using printing presses, they're using digital entries, but the supply of dollars is expanding, number one. Number two, none of these countries anymore want to use the U.S. dollar to settle transactions. And why should the Chinese and the Russians, when they trade with each other, who are the Indians and the Iranians when they trade with each other, why should they use the currency of another country, and a non-friendly country at that? They don't really want to use each other's currencies because why should the Iranians trust the Russian ruble? Anything could happen to that piece of paper. So they're going to go back to gold, and there's going to be much, much more demand from gold from these central banks just to settle international trades. Because they all realize you can't trust each other's paper.
No, I would agree 1,000% with that. I think it is going to be bullish, and I've been saying this ever since gold was just a shade under $1,000 an ounce. I know I went against some of the people who thought some of our colleagues who thought I was crazy. Paul Van Eden being one. Gold was trading down around $1,000 an ounce. Paul was very, very bearish, and I very seldom disagree with him, but in this case, I said, Paul, I simply cannot agree. The fundamentals are there for a significantly long, in my opinion, bull market in gold. And, with the events that are going on around the world right now, gold and silver, I guess I should say, but with the events that are going on around the world right now, Doug, that's just an extension of what was going on back then 3 or 4 years ago. It's the perfect storm for precious metals, for God's sakes.
Yeah, well, it is, and Paul's a very smart guy.
Yes, he is.
But on this one thing, he's got an EDA fix, and he just won't let it go. So I don't know what gold is really worth per ounce, and certainly relative to where it's been over the last 20 or 30 years, it's no longer cheap.
No.
But I think it's got to get a lot more expensive. There's only 6 billion ounces of gold in the world, and that's less than an ounce for every man, woman, and child on the planet. So the price of gold in terms of dollars, I think, has got to be much higher in order to facilitate trade.
Well, I've been following your lead, Doug, in Casey Research and the various publications on Casey Research, and I have to tell you, a lot of my feelings stem from a lot of the things that you and your colleagues write. Listen, we provide a link on our homepage, you guys out there listening to Casey Research. If you want to get more information about it, click on their banner. It is, in my opinion, of all of the services anywhere, the best. Thanks for listening.